We're going to get started now with the writers panel. There's Michael. Yay. So there's been an interesting kind of development in the last few years of the animal rights and farmed animal protection movement, and that is that there is now, it used to be that the books were all, nonfiction and information about the movement, but now we're seeing fiction and children's and young adult novels, and it's really, I think, an important addition to the movement to bring artistic creativity into it, to draw people in that might not otherwise be interested, but they hear about this amazing book. So we're excited to have an authors panel today, and I'm going to introduce all three. They're going to be going one after the other. So we start with Ruby Roth, and she is the world's leading author and illustrator of vegan and vegetarian books for children. Her books have been featured on CNN, Fox, Today, and other major media outlets. Roth wrote Why We Don't Eat Animals in 2009, the first book of its kind for children's literature. Vegan is Love and V is for Vegan followed soon after. Or not soon after, but after. And Roth has received international attention for her sensitive yet frank advocacy for a vegan diet and lifestyle. Our second speaker in the middle is going to be Christopher Locke. He has worked in the television industry for over a decade before pursuing his passion project, his book, Persimmon Takes on Humanity, which is a thrilling first book in a young adult series, The Enlightenment Adventures. The enthralling story follows Persimmon, a compassionate raccoon who teams up with a group of courageous critters who risk their own lives to rescue any creature that they see suffering at the hands of humans. Since the book's debut, it has received rave reviews by prominent leaders in the animal advocacy movement and readers alike, and been featured on numerous animal-friendly media outlets. And our final speaker on the end is Michael Bedar. He is an avid plant source natural foods researcher and writer. After co-founding and helping produce the hit documentary Simply Raw, Reversing Diabetes in 30 Days, he completed his master's degree at the Cousin School of Holistic Wellness. Michael has now printed the widely acclaimed novel Sweet Healing, a whole health journey. And he's been touring and speaking with readers about his book, Seeking Wellness, from New York to California, and he's going to be going to Europe next. That's exciting. So please welcome all our speakers, and Ruby will be up first.
Okay. Hi, everybody. This is going to be rough and tumble because we have so short a time, but I want to very briefly talk to you about my experience mixing my personal passions, namely art, with vegan activism, and offer you some advice on where and how to start being a creative activist yourself. So I'll give you a little more background on me. These are my books. I'm the leading author and illustrator of vegan and vegetarian books for kids. My newest book is coming out in a couple of weeks. It is called the Help Yourself Cookbook for Kids, 60 Easy Plant-Based Recipes Kids Can Make to Stay Healthy and Save the World. I had a lot of requests for a book that vegan families could take to school and to give to non-vegan family members and friends without starting a war in those households. So I specially designed this one to be that book. It's made for kids, but it's also simple enough for adults to figure out, I think, too. So it's also for lazy and busy adults, so there's no more excuses left. So my first three books were the first in nonfiction children's literature to address factory farming, the environment, endangered species, entertainment, basically the entire vegan lifestyle. They've been translated now into multiple languages, and the books have helped me reach families who are successfully raising vegan kids all around the world, and they've also landed me on some major media having to defend, not my books, but the very notion of veganism. I'll give you just a little glimpse of that. You can see the rest on my website, wedon'teatanimals.com. But this is me on Fox News. I had to debate a child psychologist live. So you can imagine what that was like. He literally said those words, "Stay away from this book," because he felt that this book and talking to kids about factory farming and animal testing was just too much for them to handle. I basically squashed that argument. That's how I felt inside. I didn't do that on national TV, but I told him he was spewing nonsense. And it's a very funny clip to watch. You can go check it out on my site. And one of my proudest moments was after this clip, I did get mail, some hate mail, but mail from Fox viewers who thought that, some people that said, "Oh, I'm not vegan, but I thought what you said was interesting," and the mediator and the guest were so out of control. So I felt really good about that. So my creative endeavors began where I found myself in 2009, which was teaching art at an after-school program. I was teaching these kids, and they all started to be very curious about why I wasn't eating the string cheese and drinking the milk that they were served at recess. And I went to the library to try to find a book that we could do an art project on and talk about, and all I saw was books about a talking animal or a talking vegetable, picture books. And I felt that, A, that took away from the intelligence of the children themselves, and also from the very rich emotional lives of animals. So I decided I had a background, my majors were social justice and political studies, American studies at UC Santa Cruz, and I decided to put my art, which I had always planned to do, and those studies together to create the books that I wanted to see. So I landed here creating these books as a result of working on the things that I was already drawn to and filling my time with and good at accomplishing. So namely, that was drawing and painting, coming up with meaningful lesson plans for kids, being alone in a studio, studying, learning, synthesizing thoughts, and writing down revelations while I read. Even if I didn't know what I was going to do with those things, or if anything at all, that's what I liked to do. So given my situation and the skills that I was already developing and the resources that I had, I just started where I was. I didn't have to reinvent the wheel to get started. I didn't have to change careers or my interests. So if you're looking to become more involved with vegan activism, that is my first piece of advice, to start where you are. And this is important because we all know that vegan activism and changing people's hearts and minds alone is hard enough before you add the downsides of a creative endeavor to that. And you have to be willing to take on all sides of the creative endeavor or the business, not just the inspiring and fun and creative parts. But here's what I mean. Such flattering pictures of myself. But this is to illustrate my point, which is this is a tough day in the process. All kinds of things were going wrong. But for my particular constitution, I could tolerate the stressors and the challenges and the obstacles that come along with being in the creative territory. But this also means dealing with some rejection. A couple of years ago, I started shopping my fourth book around, the cookbook, to agents, and I thought that would be not such a hard sell because I had 3 books. I had a following of over 100,000 people. I had multiple translations, and yet I was still met with rejection from agents, even vegetarian agents. I announced my book a couple of weeks ago. This response was from my own newsletter member who said, "You know I love your subject matter in your books, yet I don't like the illustrations. I won't buy any more kids' books written by you. I'm sorry." So this is the kind of stuff when you put your creativity out on the line from your own people. Another challenge of mixing your creative passions with activism is the potential criticism. So whether you ask for it or not, when you put something out into the public, you're offering up your very soul for debate. So you need to really love and stand behind your work so much that you are willing to put yourself on the line and even risk attempts at public humiliation. Thank you. I've experienced criticism about some other projects or a t-shirt or something that I wanted to do. And that did stop me from moving forward on those projects because it made me question the project and maybe I wasn't fully behind it to begin with. But I was in the case of these books, and I could handle all of this and have that stoicism about the activism because my heart was fully in it. So people have asked me if I've ever thought about, creating or hosting a kids' TV show, a song and dance thing, and that would be a nightmare for me because that is not a natural fit. That's not. I don't think I could handle the activism part on that, on top of doing something that didn't come naturally. So this underscores my point: is to work on what comes naturally to you and get better and better at that. Nothing on my journey was easy, but I was able to tolerate the challenges because it was a natural fit. So some of the questions that I asked myself about finding the right fit for my activism might apply to people in this room who are seeking the same thing and ways to be active that won't exhaust you. So here are some of the questions I asked myself, and I started with the personal. Where are you at this moment? Are you a student? Are you a mom? Are you at a full-time job? Are you already part of a club or an organization or a community? And what are you particularly good at? What skills do you already have developed? What do people compliment you on or thank you for? That is a really good clue about how you can be helpful. If you're a motivator, if you're a great listener, if you're good at organizing, if you make the best cookies and people ask you for more of those. And then comes the practical. What can you do right away with the resources that you have without reinventing the wheel or necessarily changing careers? So if you're a student, what access do you have that others don't? And that might be an excuse to research or an excuse to go be an intern somewhere or to get interviews for a paper that you want to do, or to leaflet or to table in a highly trafficked quad location. It doesn't have to be the most super creative thing in the world to actually be effective and really helpful. If you're a lawyer, it can be pro bono work. If you're a makeup artist, I always just remind people to start exactly where you are. You don't have to become a vegan activist. Please become a vegan activist in the field you're in, because that's where we need you. We need everybody working where they are. So I know makeup artists who have started to introduce cruelty-free products to their, not only just because they want to, but really talking about it with their clients and talking about why they're using it. And of course, if you're a parent or you've got kids in school, there's always ways to insert yourself into those school programs. And I see flyers out there about alternative ideas to things that happen in school. And it can be any position. If you're a janitor, bringing in cruelty-free products and talking about it, and become like the plant-based janitor guy. Anybody in any industry or any circle can begin to publicize their vegan knowledge in an effective way. And then there's always finding a hole or an unmet need in the marketplace. I saw a need for a nonfiction vegan book that wasn't about a talking tomato, because I couldn't talk like that to these kids, and I just felt like they were smarter, and I didn't see anything out there like that. So find a problem to solve. What do you need within veganism that you can't find, or what do you see out there that you can do better? And lastly, it seems obvious, but making a difference isn't always obvious. I have a big Facebook following, and people always send me a song that they recorded about how awesome cows are. And while that's really sweet, and I think it's a almost a spiritual endeavor to keep yourself going, I see a lot of stuff that I don't think necessarily has an effect on other people or actually helps animals. So in general, I don't find using activism purely as an as an outlet for self-expression, useful or effective. But I would rather we all focus on actions with, a self-informed criteria of effectiveness that you check and double check yourself with. So projects that make a measurable difference, that either help people move toward veganism or that help animals. And with that in mind, there's so much still to do. I wanted to leave you with just a couple of examples of people who found ways to meld their creative passions with vegan activism in effective ways by starting exactly where they were at. I don't know if you guys have heard of some of these people, the vegan black metal chef. He does, that's what he's into. He wants to wear that stuff and make his death metal music videos, and he does that while he's giving people vegan recipes. And he's got like 80,000 people that he's feeding these recipes to. Or the Vegan Zombie, they're a cooking show set in a zombie apocalypse. They have a lot of followers. These are people taking what they like and doing something with it. Juliana Hever, she was a dietitian, and she made herself the plant-based dietitian. She's a great listener. She's great with people, and so she put those skills to use. Suko has been around a long time. She is a die-hard artist for issues of activism, all kinds of activism, but mainly, I think in recent years, factory farming. And then Kat Von D, she's a famous tattoo artist, and she just recently created she had a makeup line, and she went vegan and then made all of her products cruelty-free and animal product-free. And she just wrote a huge check, I think, to Mercy for Animals. So again, these people are doing what they love and then becoming a spokesperson, not changing what they do, but using their passions effectively and creatively. So that's my little spiel. Thank you. And come, I have, thank you. I have one advanced copy of the Help Yourself cookbook out there that I'm showing around. I'm also giving bonus material for pre-orders up until the release date, April 5th. So you can send me your receipts, and I'll send you coloring pages and bonus recipes and all that stuff. So come visit me out there. Thank you, guys.
Hello, hello. How y'all doing? Fantastic. I appreciate the excitement. Let me open up my project here.
Just for the video.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hello, hello. Oh, that's better. All right. Okay, so first off, thanks for coming. I want to say that I remember to talk through the mic. I want to say that I'm very honored to be up here with these two amazing authors. Ruby is a pioneer in the fiction and nonfiction field, so we're here, we're following your lead, and Michael has a great book he's going to talk to you about. So let me talk about mine, Persimmon Takes on Humanity. And with this book, what I want to talk about specifically is the importance of animal rights fiction to the animal advocacy movement. And for that, I'm going to do it three ways. First, I'm going to talk about some beloved literary classics that take on social justice issues. Second, I'm going to talk about what inspired me to write my own book. And third, I'm going to talk about how I made this book as effective for animal advocacy as possible. All right. Number one, changing the world through imagination. So, how many people here, by show of hands, have read a book that made them laugh or made them cry? Right? Everyone, unless you're a robot. Books make you feel things. So when you feel something, what if you use that tactic to tackle a social justice issue, all right? So there's a book in particular that really moved me. It's called Hyperbole and a Half, and the author, oh, it's great, you like it too. We're good friends. So this book tackles the issue of struggling with depression, and it does it in a funny and heartbreaking way, and I've had my melancholy moments in life, so when I read this, it really hit hard. So I have some other great examples of that. We've got To Kill a Mockingbird, another amazing book. This book tackles racial intolerance, and kids all over the world read this book, and it teaches them to be better people. Another, Uncle Tom's Cabin. Now, by today's standard, some of the characters in the book are a bit offensively stereotypical. But back in 1852, when this book came out, it was an amazing tool for the abolitionist movement. It's crazy to us right now, but back then there were people who did not see slavery as wrong, and they thought, what's the problem with it? Well, they read this book and were like, oh, I get it. They're suffering. They don't want to be enslaved, right? Very important. The Grapes of Wrath, a really great book about migrants suffering during the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression. And it showed people that they're not lazy, they're struggling. There's a huge drought, things are tough for them. It also hits on the issues of corrupt banks, and it hits on the issues of police brutality, unfortunately things that we are still dealing with today. The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. Interestingly enough, when this book was written, it was initially intended to show people what it's like to be an immigrant and how hard it is to work in the stockyards and dangerous. But what really hit home for people was all of the ways how gross and disgusting their food system is. So people would get their hand caught that worked in some slaughterhouse, and then it'd get ground up with the other food, right? And people, yeah, gross, I know. So people read the book and they were like, this is awful. So it was such an uproar that our government then created some consumer protection laws. Now, I think a lot of us here know, unfortunately, the government doesn't do a good job of going in there and actually checking in on it, but it got the ball rolling. So it was an important first step. Okay, so what do all these books have in common? They have characters that care about these issues, that are in there suffering in that scenario, and then because you care about that character, you care about that issue. All right, well, what if we do that same thing for animal rights? That's what inspired me to write Persimmon Takes on Humanity. So let me tell you the kind of backstory of how I came about writing it. In 2004, I read Fast Food Nation. How many people have read this book? Cool. So back when I was a youngster, it was all the rage. And this book hits on what it's like to be someone who works in a fast food place and how they treat them terribly and how slaughterhouse workers are mistreated. And very, very briefly, it hits on some of the issues that animals go through in factory farms. That wasn't enough for me. I wanted to know more because that's what really, really hit me hard. So I thought, well, let me do some more research. So I went to PETA.org. I went to merciesforanimals.org. I did all kinds of research. And what I came across shook me to the core. I have a few images. Some of you who know about what happens to animals, some of the stuff is graphic, but it's to prove a point, so bear with me. I saw what cows go through, the meat and dairy industry. I saw what chickens go through in the broiler industry and the egg-laying hen industry. Now, I'm someone who definitely cares about progressive issues. And I care about LGBT rights. I care about women's rights, workers' rights. You name it, I just want everyone to be treated equally and treated fairly. But I realized that my actions were not in line with my ethics when it came to animal issues. So I said to myself, if I'm going to consider myself to be a decent human being, I need to stop hurting animals. So immediately I went in my journal and said, I'm never eating meat again. Done. Now, with that, I did more research. I found out what the elephants and all the animals go through in circuses, when people wear fur or leather, what those animals go through. And I was just like, I'm done. I am not going to hurt any animals ever again. I'm going to become vegan. Best decision of my life. Oh, you guys. So it was important for me to do that. But beyond that, I thought, I need to get out there and I want to inspire other people to care about this issue. So I went to all kinds of demonstrations. I did leafleting. I did all kinds of things. This was me at a circus demo. And here, I don't know if you know, but they really mistreat the animals behind the scenes in circuses. So I would go and I would talk to people as they walk into the circus. I would say, hey, I don't know if you know what's happening to these animals. You seem like a good person. And I think your kid probably would not want to support abusing an animal. It works really well. But deep down, as a writer, since I was a kid, I definitely always knew I wanted to write something that showed people what animals go through. So it took me many years, but I finally came up with a concept that I was like, oh, that's the one. It's called Persimmon Takes on Humanity. So let me tell you the basic premise for this story. A group of animals led by Persimmon, who is the raccoon in this picture, they find out that humans are mistreating other animals, so they go on a huge adventure to save animals from humans. When it was originally intended, it was supposed to be one book, but I started writing it, and I would show it to my wife, who edited the book, and it kept getting more and more rich and more complex. And eventually, she was like, you should change this into multiple books because it's so interesting. Why don't you just keep it going? So I was like, okay, that sounds like a great idea. So that's what I did. So the first book to this one, I'm actually writing the second one right now. It's going very well. It's been a lot of fun. But I want to talk about then, how did I make this book an effective tool for animals? So what I did was I came up with like a list of things that everyone here, if you want to write a book, these are things that I think will really inspire people when they're reading your stories to make them care about animal issues. All right, first off, as you saw in some of those images, what's happening to animals out there can be depressing and heartbreaking. So immediately I was like, I need to make this exciting. I need to go in there and write something that when people read it, they cannot put this book down. So, for example, at the end of every chapter, there's a cliffhanger. The chapters are really short. So at 2 in the morning, I know this happens to me, when I'm reading a book, I'm like, oh, the next chapter is like 3 pages. I'll just keep reading, right? So you keep doing that. So it keeps people reading the story. Also, by nature, it's an exciting story. It's a group of animals that goes out to save other animals. So at every turn, they find out a new animal is being mistreated by humans, but then they go in there to save them. So that's the exciting part. Are they going to save them? Keeps you reading. And then after that, you're like, well, are they going to save the next group of animals? So that was my whole point. Okay, another very important point. The book had to be written from the animal's perspective. Initially, I thought, okay, well, I'll write a book about a group of humans that goes around saving animals. But this is their story. And if you're really genuinely going to care what they're going through, if you have a cow or some animal that's stuck in a cage or stuck in a veal crate or something like that, if you see that animal personally struggling, you're going to then feel for them. And that was my intention. I want people, when they read this, to really feel what it's like to be in a cage. So they, as they're reading it, will go, let's get that animal out of the cage. So the animals go, in the book, Persimmon, she gets a group of animals that she inspires to help her. So they form a team, and they go around saving animals. One of the places they go is a factory farm. They also go to a fur farm, and they witness what those animals are going through. Again, some, sorry, they're upsetting. I'll move through them. But the conditions that they're in are absolutely awful. And so I wanted to show that. They also go to a circus, and they find out what those animals are going through. They find out that the babies are put in these tiny little warehouses, and their spirits are broken for hours and hours on end. They don't get to be free, okay? They find out that the baby elephants are pulled and pushed and forced to do all these terrible tricks just so people can go sit in a room and laugh and think it's fun, right? So when people read this, they're like, this is awful. I want these animals to be saved. But again, the exciting thing is that the characters in the book are meant to save these animals. That doesn't mean they go in and they just, hey, let's get everyone out. But the whole intention is that they save them. So it's exciting. They're victorious at times. They do save some animals' lives. All right, another very important point, the characters. You ever seen a horror movie where somebody's being chased by a chainsaw and you're like, I don't care if they die. Okay, I cannot have that happen in this book. When people read this book, I need them to care about these characters. So in real life, all the animals that are out there suffering are absolutely, they're going to want them to be saved as well. So I created really lovable and interesting characters. This is Persimmon. She's the lead character. She's very clever. She is the one who inspires her friends. She's a great leader. She's like everything I wish I was as an activist. Very brave, goes out there, wants to save animals at all times. Then her little brother. I should have like the first 5 pages of the book just be cute animals, and people are like, this is my favorite book. This is Scraps. That's her little brother. He loves adventure too. He wants to go with Persimmon. Whatever she does, he wants to go and follow her. Then we have Durpoke, who's an opossum. And same thing, he loves his 2 friends, but he actually wants nothing to do with adventure, and they always kind of drag him into it. He's very cautious and thoughtful, so I'm a big fan of Durpokes. So here's 2 things about the characters that were very important. One, I wanted them to be heroic. So in the beginning of the book, you have a group of animals that they come across that are being abused. Now, every day people are confronted with this scenario. Do they help the animal? Do they not? Now, a lot of us would say, of course, you help the animal. But every single day, people make the choice not to help animals. So the characters come across, they're heroic. They see animals suffering, immediately they say, we need to save them. Now remember, these are little forest critters, okay? They're about to take on a bunch of humans. They don't understand what's happening in these environments, but they don't care because they see someone suffering, they need to save their life. I love that about them. Again, they're braver than I am. I wouldn't go against a bunch of humans with guns, but they do. Another very important point, in the beginning of the book, they are not yet activists. I did write the book for people that are vegans and vegetarians. I want them to love the book too, and they've told me that it helped reinvigorate their activism, which is great. But I also wrote it to inspire people who don't know about the issues. So I don't want them to start the book and to feel attacked. So all the characters are exactly where they are. Some of the characters eat animals in the beginning of the book. You know, some of them don't really, they're just living idle lives. But as they go through the story, they learn about the issues and they're moved by it. And the same thing with the reader. I'm hoping they'll be moved by these issues and go, I want to save those animals just like they are. The very same animals that they might have just had for dinner, they'll read and go, oh my God, I got to save this animal, right? And that's a conundrum. They're like, what am I doing? Okay, something else that was, I know I've got a lot of cute little animals apparently. So something was very important. I needed the story to be an accurate depiction of what happens to animals out there. I know that a lot of people don't realize what animals are going through. They think that pigs on a farm are in a field and they're able to nuzzle and have a great time. But these are really pigs, okay? They're scared, they're depressed, they do not want to die. I wrote this book for him. He needs to have his story told. It was very important to me. As I wrote this book, I had pictures of these animals in way worse conditions than this. I had videos playing as I wrote it, constantly reminding myself, this is who I'm writing this book for. It was hard, I cried as I wrote the book sometimes, but I needed to know that these animals were gonna have their story told. So, here's the good news. Afterward, I've had people come up to me and say, the book inspired me. I don't wanna be a meat eater anymore. I'm gonna go vegetarian, I'm gonna go vegan. I've also had people say that they were already activists, and then this book inspired them to go out leafleting again, to get out there and help animals. For every single person that says that, animals' lives are being saved. That is the power of animal rights fiction, and that is why I wrote this book. You can check it out, ChristopherLocke.com. We are all out there. We all have books. Please feel free to come out there. I actually love meeting people and talking to you, especially if you've already read it. I love hearing who your favorite character is, things like that. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring enough to want to learn about animal issues. I appreciate it.
Hello, my name is Michael. Hi. I'm feeling so moved to be here with all of you. It's just me and you, no slides. I want to start just by saying how I feel a mix of chills at the power of the presenters we're seeing, including going back to, I think it's Robert and the revisionary aspirational veganism. Just I was taking a lot of notes and reflecting on that. And you know, when Hope introduced us as this kind of new wave of authors with children and fiction, being a part of that just kind of sent me into like a really grateful and excited place to be here. So my background is that during most of the 2000s, I lived at a place called the Tree of Life Center in Arizona. And this was a vegan retreat center led by a person who I wouldn't be able to write my book without, Dr. Gabriel Cousins. And there, people would come suffering as individuals, sometimes as families, in a mix of mental and physical health problems. And there they'd adapt veganism slowly, or maybe they already were, but it was a chance to be in nature, embrace an entire lifestyle. And I just saw hundreds of people leave far, just in better condition, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically. And responsibly, like a sense infused our retreat of social and environmental and animal responsibility. So that really was like the defining period of my life as a young adult. And I began to feel a responsibility to tell some of the story that I had been able to absorb there. That kind of just leads to today, where what I think I've done is mixed together a sense of nature being symmetrical, in the sense that what's good for the planet as a sustainable organism is probably good for people too. And so for me, I spend a lot of time with the readers of my book. It's like an individual days long or hours long, however it takes to read the book, session of like, what kinds of realistic processes do you go through when you are faced with your own physical suffering through a disease that has come upon you through basically majority of the issue is not being vegan, is like what brings us to a lot of the modern health epidemics. I spend a lot of time, and it's written from it is engaging and adventurous and full of like surprises and twists and turns, but at the same time they're learning steps that can lead them to veganism. And the story is told with like scenes in dramatic health crises, as well as like the kitchen of where these people live, in their community. People come out of the woodwork to be their teacher. So I kind of put myself in the position a little bit as one of the mentors who comes, like my sense of who I was. I wrote myself into several characters. Sometimes the mentor that appears for different people, and sometimes as the recipient, because I wasn't always vegan. I had my own process. And the recipients are multi-generational. So I meet people where they're at. And I want to actually piggyback on Ruby's statement about being a vegan activist, or being almost anything you want to make a difference about. Start where you are. And that's one big theme of my book, which you don't even know the title of yet. Sweet Healing, A Whole Health Journey. The characters could be from any town USA, and they have jobs. They're kind of on the end of their career, and they know something about what they do in life. They know they love their family, and they know they love they're enthusiastic about their neighbors in their town, and their children, and they want to live a good life, and but they confront disease. So, for example, Gene Curtin is one of the main characters, and he is an electrician. But since he's an electrician, that's where he's at. So the journey to discover how to become a vegan, how to heal himself, starts with speaking about electricity. It's just something he already knows. And then there's Hope, and Hope is a wildlife biologist. She knows a lot about biology. Thank you. And so her journey is exploring in conversations what can nature teach us about the planet's sustainability, and how that we can apply the same principles that she might know for decades of being a biologist to her own health. And that's never been explored in fiction that I'm really aware of. But it's like seeing people come in and year out at the Tree of Life showed me that it is a journey, and it's really worthy of a novel. It was like, I'm saying like a ton. And this is my first vegan conference speaking for Sweet Healing, so yeah. Thank you. Something about their names, by the way. I just want to speak a little bit about Hope and Jean as names I chose. In fact, there's kind of these symbols through the book. Hope is like, we all, we prefer a vegan world. We hope that people have this awakening that like gives us that world. And then Jean is, I meant it to be his name, but also to be like the sense that people have this defeatist attitude that, because of genes, and they make all kind of rationalizations about it, like I could never go vegan, or my health is just going to be the same no matter, even if I did go vegan. So there's that dynamic interplay between Hope and Jean, and they are a couple, and so there's always that interplay between them, and the reader can really resonate with that. Something about the word sweet, I just want to mention that we think of what they confront as diabetes in this particular case. And sweet, the word diabetes mellitus, which is the full name of the condition, comes from the word sweet. The doctors used to taste your blood and if it was sweet, or smell it or something, way back in the day. And but what's really sweet is finding your heart and finding compassion and finding a way of life that's going to give you a long, happy, and loving life. So the journey kind of engages those double meanings. And let's see, what else do I want to say about it? I wanted to talk about what is suffering and and there's this Buddhist idea like there's suffering and there's the end of suffering. And my particular path to this was seeing the suffering of people. I actually got to veganism and this passion of mine about writing for writing this book through that. And it's just one stream. I mean, I totally agree that the attention in this movement very well belongs on all sentient beings, of which we are a part. So I saw the death before you got to see your children grow up and pass on wisdom, and the quality of the wisdom that adults pass on to children being at stake here. So if a novel, we looked at so many great novels that Christopher showed. I also really respect the novel Ecotopia by Ernest Callenbach. It's a form of transmitting wisdom to people when they confront what's really real for them. This could reach. There's 81 million people in America with type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes, and it's about 300 million worldwide. So the book does have a target for them, but also anybody who could actually harness my body is breaking down way earlier than my ancestors did, or it should, or I wanted to. What if I really looked holistically at it? Holistic veganism is a term of Dr. Cousins, actually. You look at the physical level, the worldly sustainability and social level, and a spiritual, moral level. And then if your life is sustained longer, you can pass that on better to your children. You would become the shining example to your children. And in that sense, it's the contagion part, or the living by example part, changing the world by example. I, for one, would like to see people not only healthy, but being vegan. And at first, if it's not for their deepest sense of political activism, that's okay with me. And I wanted to reach people where they're at. So part of me wants to read a certain section just to kind of give a small glimpse. But that would take too long, actually, I just realized. So, let's see, I know we're going to have questions afterwards. So I just wanted to, let's see. I want to ask you all a question. What do you think? Give me some feedback here on the subject of health and human suffering as a stream within the movement of suffering we're trying to alleviate. And how seeing health within that fits philosophically, fits as an important part of this movement. I'd actually like to know if anyone has a thought off the top of their head. Yeah.
I was at a discussion at a potluck where people were talking about how they got it. And one woman who was there said,
Speak up a little bit.
This might not work because of the microphone and the people out there watching. So.
Okay, so if you just speak a little louder,
Okay.
so everybody hears you.
And I'll repeat it. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
So I was at a potluck where people were having a discussion about how did you get interested in veganism? And there was one woman there who said that she initially hadn't wanted to hear anything about this stuff, the animal suffering, she wanted to know anything about that. She just wanted to lose weight. That was all. She didn't want to hear any of this other stuff.
So she just wanted to lose weight. Okay.
Right. But then, after she had been vegan for a while, then she didn't find it so uncomfortable or confronting to hear about the animals.
Okay, so after she became vegan, it wasn't so uncomfortable anymore to hear about the animal suffering.
Right.
Yeah.
She became open to it, and she
Okay.
started responding to that.
No, I think that's pretty common. I think what,
So
yeah.
people can come to it by many different ways. And
Yeah.
we shouldn't try to describe, try to say, this is the best way, or this is the only way to get there. However the hell I get there, great.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So you said however you get there is great. Yeah. So let's see. Just to close. So my feeling is to go. I've been going in that direction, and yeah, the response is amazing. And there's certain qualities of the research that I did a master's thesis to get the basic qualities of human beings that lead them to choose veganism for their health or not. Like, why would, this is my last point. Why would there be those that with the same exact culture, language, country, age group, and physical conditions, but some choose to not even look at veganism and some do it full bore and really, really keep it going? And the survey interviewed 200 people, and they answered a lot of questions about their choices and health outcomes, and also their certain personality qualities and attitudes. And one was compassion, but that wasn't the only one. A sense of being sort of an agent, having an agency in your life, a sense that you do make a difference, whether it's philosophically true or not. But they had a sense of agency in their life. And they also had a sense of emotional honesty and vulnerability. They were able to say, just in general, there were people who had the ability to say, I'm depressed today, I'm melancholy today, or I'm so scared that I won't get to see my grandchildren. Like, that kind of emotional admission had a big effect on the people that chose veganism, and it was both a sense of being interconnected with others emotionally, and also a sense of, if you can see where you actually are, you can actually see someplace there might be to go to. But if you don't even have access to the feeling level of where you are, it was hard to actually see somewhere else to be, clearly. And so part of written into Sweet Healing is the practice of going from being less so to more so emotionally available, emotionally vulnerable, emotionally expressive to the people in your life, because we do change socially. We're social beings. We eat socially. And I think we shift, awaken, and reduce suffering together socially. And there's a lot of conversations in Sweet Healing about that, toward that. So thank you very much.